No, 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 no! You can't repeat! He has to now lose the bishop with a check. Magnus Carlsen is back!
First, I'm going to show you Magnus Carlsen engaging Hulk mode. Then, I'm going to show you one of the most incredible comebacks by Yavakir Sindarov, 19 years old, hugely exciting Uzbekistani player. It's the semi-finals of the Freestyle finals in South Africa. The board's an absolute mess. Let's just dive into it here because no one's got a clue what's going on. Sindarov with white in this game. They won one each in the longer time controls, so we go to this shorter time control. Pawn attacked, now defended. That's about the extent of what I've got for you here in terms of insightful commentary, because this opening's nuts. But what we do soon see is an overpowered connect 4. It's on the way. First, Magnus goes a bit King's Indian style-y with the F-pawn, but it's white with the big centre. Maybe the knight's hopping. Magnus shuts it down. H4 now makes you feel like a boss, but this never quite comes. Should it come? No clue, but it looks tasty. Bishop D7's played. F3 sets up the connect 4. Sindarov wins a cheese board just in time for Christmas. Lovely. Few dips on the side. And just to give you a sense of how wacky things are, say you play this, not played, because you're looking for C5 here. Supported, right? This is a bad plan. Then black can do this. You try and drop back to maintain it, and black does this, and black stands better, and I've just made a mess of the position. I've completely misevaluated. Magnus is spanking me, not literally on the board. But this is just an example of how you can play the most natural move and be worse, and have misjudged it. So Sindarov, in a kind of tough position to play in terms of a plan, goes rook f1, tiny bit weird. Magnus should apparently shut things down straight away. Regardless, he plays on both sides of the board and does get something going soon. First the knights leave the board, and then this sneaky sausage move. Look at that. Magnus says do it, be my guest. Because if you dive in, he's preparing this. Castles. Connect the rooks. You can do it in freestyle chess. So the queen didn't dive head first. She stayed back. We get the exchange. Queen takes here. And there's something so Magnus-esque on the way. Just wait for it. He gets the pawns rumbling. Probably you should be taken there. Looks so natural. Sindarov plays like this. Does get a big clamp on the light squares. But Magnus is ripping stuff open, and his king's a bit safer. This bishop's a bit annoying. Do you want to go here? This guy's entombed forever and a day. Now we see queen a7, not castles this time, although playable, but the rook sliding. And if you take this pawn, not played, then the queen dives in with check, and it gets really nasty, really fast. Something like this. Rook still on the pawn here. Let's pause it there. Magnus didn't take this pawn. Sindarov didn't. He instead just brought the queen back to the defense. Covered g2. Now we see bishop d7. Queen takes on h4. Maybe bringing the rook and doing it like that was a bit more prudent. I mean, definitely more prudent. Because Magnus now invades. And it is a decisive invasion. But what does he do? When you reach this position here, the best way to play is with queen f4, keep the queens on, go for the attack against the drafty king. You've still got a passed pawn, extra pawn. But Magnus plays queen takes on f2. Just loves himself an endgame. Bro can't help himself. He winds up one pawn ahead. Now they are scrambling, blitz mode, barely seconds, getting a little bit of time back per move. So Magnus just wanted something practical, simple plans. He's the GOAT of the end game, any part of the game to be fair. And in playing in such a manner, he can now put the squeeze on. Old man chess. Love how he plays on both sides here. If takes, not played, well, this is the idea. You get some invasion going. He's so astute in these blitz scrambles, looking for tricks all the time. Sindarov glides on past. b6 played. Bishop h3 here. Note, by the way, all the pawns on the opposite colour to Magnus's own bishop, so it can always run around, and this guy can never get at the pawns. Magnus can eat these, however. That's pertinent later. King f6. This was the game. Magnus jumps in. He's in control. It's masterful. The pawn's dropping. There she goes. Rook c1. X-rays the bishop. But Magnus pushes here. And after this, knight d1, either lost on time or resigns. I didn't see the live thing of it. But either way, the game's lost here. Magnus won. I had a quick look at how it could have ended. Say you push, trying to make Harry into a wizard. Well, then you can cover, let's say, natural. And I love this. You can just play this kind of simple chess. This is just one computer line. Swap off the rooks. White thinks, great, I've won back the pawn. 4 versus 5. But Magnus just munches everything. A pawn runs. You just can't get round. This was the final position. So we jump here. Sindarov now with black in a must-win game, and this one was honestly bonkers. Both players getting their bits out here. Always do it. Great etiquette at the board. Pawn defended here. And now this shows how outlandish this form of chess is. G4, best move. Now it does have a very positional point. Stop f5, okay. Still difficult move to play, pushing the pawn in front of your king. Now we see this pawn push to f4 and e4. Better structure for black. Space. Dead bishop. Note, by the way, if these pieces all disappeared, you could do this wacky queenside castle. Go absolutely miles with the rook. So you have to bear that in mind. Magnus goes for the aggressive play. Captures. And f5 is best. Sort of disconnecting this guy. But the queen slides around. And I love this move from Sindarov. It's aggressive. It's just next level chess. A5. It's just offering an entire pawn. I think the idea is simply for rapid development, and you've distracted this knight from the center. There are now lines like this. Queen's open. Bishop could come soon. Knight's now eyeing the pawn in some lines. And white doesn't necessarily have the same play over here. Okay, it's deep stuff. Could be wrong. It's happened many times before. f5 from Magnus though. Not touching it. Now bishop a7. Painful x-ray. King g2 best. Looks natural. But Magnus takes with the knight here. Saying do the discovered check. I'm not getting fossilized. I do have a square. What are you going to do? Come at me, bro. Okay. Bro, I will. Where's your knight going? Somewhere stinky. Or not. Forward. Check. Magnus wins an exchange here. Because if you move the king, whoops, here, then you get killed like this. Giving the queens up. King takes, because you can't take the knight. And you can't move back. So this. And then the bishop's crashing through. I mean, there's so many wacky patterns going on. White's completely destroying black here. So after this check, no good stepping up. Rook takes was played here, and Magnus bags an exchange. You know, he's got the pin going on. But here's the thing. Here's where it's so tricky. Queen e5, this was actually the best move. And Sindarov emerges better here, despite being an exchange down. Because he gets this massive clump of central pawns and the white pieces just aren't firing. Why not take the pawn? Well, Magnus plays this again, deep move, pawn a4. And if you try and save the pawn, let's say bishop b6 so as not to kill your own one, well then you can play bishop a2. And how are you defending? There's no bishop e6. And that's not ideal. Not a pawn you want to drop. Then the e-pawn's weak. Magnus is better. So that's why after pawn a4 we saw the immediate takes. Now bishop a2, hitting the guy, and the bishop's in time to defend. Game rumbles on. Rooks leave the board. Magnus now wins the a-pawn here. This seahorse spawns. Bishop backing up, encouraging this. I guess Magnus would then take. He's just trying to split up these pawns at all costs. But Sindarov does this great job of maintaining the central tension. And before you can say, let's all have a big game of swimming chess, bring your goggles, Magnus gains space there, and knight d4. Hits this pawn on e2. Defended. Sorry, not defended. Taken. Or defended like that, let's say, by chopping the actual piece. Giving this bishop pair. Actually, no. You already had it. No, you didn't. Yes, you did give the bishop pair. Now we see pawn a5. And it's Magnus's only teeny weeny glimmer of hope. The 2-on-1 here. But this black king's marching in. You're going to see the power of the laser bishops here. Watch them go. Pawn defended, bishop d7, rook bouncing round, and it's a lovely trap from Magnus. Take here, and as usual, his judgment's spot on. This is winning for white, actually. Once you break up the pawns, basically, a lot of the black advantage disappears. Sindarov understands this. He maintains the control in this Magnus-esque manner, squeezing like a Titanoboa. Now he advances. Only now. This pawn's committed, and Magnus is in a world of pain. He's desperately clinging on. Now we see this bishop put more pressure here. And again, he really wants Magnus to take. Connects the pawns. That's terrible. It's plain sailing from there for black. So Magnus plays this great move. He's fighting tenaciously, asking questions every time. How do you want to take? Do you want to do this? How do you assess it? Is this winning for you? Well, you have to push the h-pawn. If you were to try and save this pawn, then you're already in a draw. So this is winning for black, but it's not obvious, right? This is winning. Again, g4 only moved to stay significantly better. We didn't see takes. Instead, Sindarov plays h4. It's a great move. It keeps advantage. Bishop g6 from Magnus. Pawn now defended. Sorry, not defended. Rook attacked here. As you can see, there's a lot going on. My head's scrambled egg. Now we see bishop c1. It's wonderful control by the youngster because he's forced away the rook. It had no squares on this third rank. Now he's going to win the pawn. Actually taking with the pawn is strongest. As you can imagine, there's these brilliant lines where the pawn starts running very fast. Whoops, guided by the bishops, that sort of thing. Also, sometimes the bishop just munches these when the rook is distracted with the king to stop the pawn. But not played. The natural move is played, keeping the pawns together. I mean, who wants triple pawns, right? Now we see the king step back here and bishop d3. Defends that one. b5 from Magnus. Now, why would you give the pawn? Which you do really have to take. Well, you don't actually. g4 is very strong. Didn't click down that line. But this is the human move. White was about to make a passer. This is Magnus's point. Finally picks up one of the central ones. Hits b7. Then things get dangerous. Pawn d3 is played here. And it's not the best. Bishop c6 was the clean winning move. But again, takes. Do you give an outside runner? No, probably king takes. But it's not easy. They're so low on time. This pawn now pushes. Bishop takes on b7 played. And bishop d4 hits the rook. It saves itself. Wrong square apparently. Could have been a draw with it gone to the right square, but this was the game. Now we see bishop c4, rook a3. It's just madness. They're scrambling. The rook drops. The pawn pushes. What is going on? Magnus makes an entire new queen and yet's completely losing the game. This is bonkers. Again, it's the power of those bishops. King c1 only square. There she goes. It's a baby girl. And we reach this position. White is busted. And the simplest way to show it is king e6. Because the checks run out very fast. Where are your checks, right? And the bishop can even block in some lines. Here's one sample. Once you get to here, the queen doesn't even have a check. They do run out very fast. So after check, this was the simplest, or something like this. But this was played. And Magnus starts doing some checking business. Now, there's no point constantly stopping when it could have been a draw, could have been a win, could have been a draw, could have been a win, because it's just crazy. It's all a bit inhuman when you're on seconds. But long story short, Sindarov does the wrong kind of running with the king, and he reaches this position where he's in a dead draw. If you keep stepping back, Magnus is just going to check you forever. Obviously, you can't go to these dark squares. They're controlled. So what if you step up or up, like say here? Well, now there's check, discovery on the queen. And you can get something like this, where you reach an opposite coloured bishops, and amazingly, it's drawn. But it's not actually that shocking, because we know you can set up these fortresses on the light squares with these kind of constructions, and you just bounce and wait forever. The king and the bishop can never be dislodged. So let's run back here. King e6 not working, or king d6, similar thing. So king e7 was tried, but there's a new problem. Takes with check. And now the whole house collapses for black. Check. Magnus, a bishop ahead now. And again, it's just fortress time. Here the players agreed a draw after g4. Sindarov gutted. Naturally, he was completely winning. I'm just showing you one quick sample line as to how it could be a draw. But this was the actual final position. Magnus advances by the skin of his teeth. I think Levon was doing well. Not sure who actually won in that one. Do I have it here? Let's have a quick look. Results. Okay, yeah. Levon beat Vincent 3-1. Hope you enjoyed. Have a look at the video on screen for another epic game of chess. And thanks very much for watching. Cheers.